In this video, we're going to learn how Cloudflare Workers and CloudTruth can work together to pass in configuration data. So first things first, just a brief overview. Cloudflare Workers it's a serverless service. So for example, if you're familiar with AWS Lambda, Azure Web Apps, it's the same thing. Except the difference with Cloudflare Workers is that it's supposed to give you the ability to have essentially 0 cold starts. So, if you've ever used a serverless service before, you'd notice that the first time that you're deploying the function, it could be a little bit slow because it's like a cold start. With Cloudflare Workers, it's not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be pretty instantaneous. As you can see, I'm under Workers here. In Overview, if I click on Create Service, I can go ahead and I can actually create a Cloudflare Worker service right here. But we want to do things on the CLI, right? Because we want the ability to automate it. We want the ability to update the code, all that stuff. Now to do that, we can use the Wrangler CLI, which we can see right here. And the Wrangler CLI is how you work with Cloudflare Workers on the command line and through code. So if I go ahead and if I open that up here, I just want to show. So it does give you the ability to install the Wrangler CLI via the npm package manager. You can log into it, all that good stuff, and we're going to go through that. And another thing that it gives you the ability to do is just start with a basic starter project essentially. So if you want to do that, as in if you don't have any code right now that you want to deploy to the Cloudflare Worker, you can go ahead and you can use one of these quick starts, and they have a bunch for JS, for TypeScript. Pretty much there's a bunch of stuff here that you can see, so you can definitely go through that. So let's head over to VS Code really quick. All right, so now first things first, you of course want to ensure that you have npm installed. So I'm going to run an npm install against Wrangler. All right, and as we can see, that was installed successfully. Next, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to log in. So I'm going to run Wrangler login. And notice here how it's going to open up the web browser just like that for me. And it's going to ask me, hey, do you want to have Wrangler give access to Cloudflare, yada? We're going to say yes. So I'm going to click allow. All right, and as you can see, we're good to go there. Pretty straightforward. Don't have to pass in any API keys, anything like that. It just opens it up via OAuth. So do we want to send metrics? No. And as we can see, everything is connected from a CLI perspective. So we're now authenticated via the Wrangler CLI to our Cloudflare instance. Okay, so now that we have that up and running, we want to ensure that we initialize an application. So I'm going to run Wrangler init test app. So it's literally just going to be the name of our application. All right, and as you can see, create the Wrangler configuration file, which is essentially just a config file that points to the Cloudflare worker. I'm going to say yes. It's going to ask us what type of package we want to use. So do we want to use TypeScript? I'm going to say no. It's going to ask us if we want to create an index.js. We're going to say fetch handler, for example. And then, so essentially what this is doing is it's asking us right off the bat if we want to do a bunch of configurations. Now in the beginning, this can seem a little bit cumbersome because you're just getting started. So let's go ahead and actually cancel out of this. I'm going to do an ls, make sure nothing was saved. So it was. So I'm going to do an rmrf on test app, ls again, good to go. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to use one of those worker templates. So I'm going to copy this, and what we're going to do here is we're going to generate one of the test apps. So for example, if I go back here and I go here, this JavaScript starter one, this is the exact one that we're going to be using. So again, I'm just going to copy this. It's the same command. It's in VS Code right now, and I'm going to paste it in. All right, and just like that, we have our test app. So if I open it up here, we can see we have our index.js. We can see that we have our Wrangler configuration file, just like that. And our index.js right here, as you can see, it's just a simple hello world app. So if we run it, it's just going to respond hello world, which is fine. We don't need anything crazy here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clear the screen. And now what we can do is we can cd into the app and we can publish our code. But we don't want to do that just yet. We want to use CloudTruth to be able to work with Wrangler and the Cloudflare workers. So here's what we're going to do. Now, first things first, we're going to set an environment variable here. Okay. So I'm going to remove the hello worker part here. So just that string. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in process.env dot, let's give it a name, response. Okay, pretty straightforward. So as you can see, I'm going to have a environment variable called response. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to go to the web browser and I'm going to go to CloudTruth. All right, and as we can see, I'm at CloudTruth here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to projects and I'm going to create a new project and I'm going to call it Workers for Cloudflare Workers. I'm going to create that project. Next, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch to that project and then I'm going to go to parameters. All right, now from here, I'm going to create a new parameter. We're going to call it response. I'm going to click create parameter. Then we're going to give it a value. We're going to give it hello world. Save. All right, so now as we can see, we have an environment variable, well, a parameter rather, but as we ingest it in the index.js, it's going to be an environment variable. And the value is hello world. So if we go back to VS Code here, what we can do is we can use the CloudTruth CLI to essentially kick off this configuration, or this application rather, and call upon CloudTruth to utilize the parameter, this response parameter or environment variable, right? So if I go to the README right here, we can see that we have the command. So first we're going to specify the CloudTruth CLI. We're going to specify our project, which is workers we just created. We'll specify an environment, for example, development, but it could be staging, prod, etc. And then we're going to specify this run command here to tell CloudTruth what we want to do. So we want to run the Wrangler publish command. So let's go ahead and copy that. We're going to CD into our test app. All right, we're good to go here. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to run our CloudTruth command. Oop, and we got an error here. We actually have to point to our index.js. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to point right to it. We're going to say index.js. Go ahead and we'll run that again. All right, as you can see, it's going to make sure that we're all configured here. We're going to allow authorization because, again, remember, we're running the configuration for the first time. So even though we authenticated via the CLI, we didn't authenticate via this app. So I'm going to click allow. All right, let's head back to VS Code. As you can see, we're good to go here. Now, if you get this error, just notice here how you have to pass in a date. Now, the reason why I wanted to show this is because it's actually not in the configuration file by default for whatever reason, as it should be, but that's totally fine. But what we can do is we can just go ahead and we can copy that and paste it in. All right, let's try to run our configuration one more time. And as you can see, this was published successfully. Now, one thing that I do want to showcase here. Notice how I'm not specifying my route, zone ID, or account ID. Now, the account ID should realistically be private. Now, if you're pushing this up to GitHub or something like that, you obviously don't want to specify that here, which is why I chose to use the OAuth configuration on the CLI. So when the web page popped up to authenticate me, I'd rather use that than save it to GitHub or something, for example. Now, on the flip side, if you're using maybe CI/CD, you're going to want to specify it here, but instead maybe you'll specify a variable or something like that and pass in a secret on the command line. And that's how you can get started using CloudTruth to pass in configuration data into any JavaScript app. But of course, this is specifically around using Cloudflare Workers. Thank you so much for watching.